This is the moment we've all been waiting for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world. Let's get ready to
Welcome to the Junkyard Pod. Today we are going to talk all about Team USA and the 2024 Olympics, what it was like watching those games unfold, and if we think any members of the Cavaliers will be selected to compete in 2028. Joining me to do so is my co-host Jackson Flickinger. And Jackson, let's just start by talking a little bit about Guerschon Yabusele, this French power forward who has gained a lot of interest online, especially within Cavs Twitter after posterizing LeBron James, and he had a pretty decent Olympic run overall. He was the 16th overall pick back in the 2016 NBA draft, and he said that he's ready for an NBA comeback on Twitter. He has the obvious connection to the Cavs through Kenny Atkinson, who was on the coaching staff for France this year at the Olympics. And hey, he's a 6-foot basketball player. Cavs don't have many of those. So I see the interest, but Jackson, let's start off. I want to ask you this. Do you think Yabusele is worth taking a chance on, or are Cavs fans just getting carried away?
I think he's worth taking a chance on, but I also kind of want to push back a little bit on like the enthusiasm because FIBA is a very different game, and I think we have countless examples of this. So just because he performed really well in FIBA in the Olympics, that doesn't mean that it's going to be a 1-to-1 translation. Just, I guess dunking, like, there's nothing different between dunking on LeBron in France or dunking on LeBron in, LA. But it's just a different game, and I think the style of play rewards different games. We saw Jason Tatum get rightfully benched, one, because he sucks and the Celtics suck, but two...
2 minutes to hit it.
But two, it's just a very different game in what kind of style of play gets rewarded. Jason Tatum, somebody who likes to kind of ball stop a little bit, and that works well in the NBA, especially when you're the leading force of your team. And we've seen that his team won a championship. Yeah, Jaylen Brown. Don't want to.
Your point still
don't want to shortchange it, but like the style of play doesn't always translate over. Whereas somebody who is, like the FIBA Olympics, it's a little bit smaller. There's not the dominant big men that we see in the NBA, or at least not the depth of the dominant big men. So you can kind of get away with being more of a tweener, and I think that's kind of what Yabusele is. He's not a 3 in the NBA. I don't know if he's a 4, So he showed a lot of good things, and would I rather have him than Marcus Morris? Absolutely. So just because there is an upside there, whereas you kind of know what you're getting from Morris. Yeah, you know what you're getting with Morris, and Morris had that great game against the Celtics, but I don't think he's somebody who you'd really want to count on for 82 games. And Yabusele may not be someone you want to count on for 82 games, but there's at least an upside. He's in the prime of his basketball playing career, so it is something that could be helpful. But I do also want to point out that, even as good as he played in the Olympics, he's only shot 28% from 3, which, he's going to have to shoot better for any of this to translate over to the NBA. And if you look at his international stats, he has shot better recently, but it's in low volume. Like, he's not really a high volume 3-point shooter or anything like that, which is fine. But I do think that there's a reason why it didn't work out in the NBA. And if he did get signed by the Cavs, which is a big if, because this is just speculative right now, there's not really like solid reporting on it. It's more kind of like Kenny Atkinson is going to talk about it after the Olympics. And you would think that because he's had he's been on the coaching staff with Yabusele, that you think that there's a connection there, but maybe he doesn't, maybe he doesn't really like Yabusele. Who knows? So it's like, we'll see what happens. He probably does, because France's tournament kind of turned around when they put Yabusele in the starting lineup and kind of got rid of Gobert and kind of kicked him to the curb. So it's just, it's very speculative at this point. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's important to keep in mind, is that there isn't any like hard concrete, like he's considering joining the Cavs. It's kind of just Cavs fans and Cavs Twitter trying to put two and two together because there is the Kenny Atkinson connection, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he's on his way over. I like that you mentioned that there's the upside swing, or just you're getting someone in the prime of their basketball career. I mentioned this when I was thinking of the Cavs trying to find backup bigs. When you look at the last few years, it's been like Robin Lopez, Tristan Thompson, these like old Davis. Like at this point, I would rather try someone who has a little bit of an upside, whether it's Yabusele or even like JT Thor as an example of like, hey, at least like to me, if you take a chance on an unknown, odds are it probably won't pay off, but at least it's better than like, hey, we know Robin Lopez is ancient and isn't going to be able to play, but he's a good locker room guy. Like, I think they need to try something here. I've seen people call Yabusele the French Ben Wallace. To me, he's more Lamar Stevens with an afro. He doesn't have an identical game, but they're going to play identical roles on the Cavs. Mm-hmm. It's basically like, hey, be the energy guy who comes off the bench. You're going to rebound, attack the rim. Please, for the love of God, just shoot open threes at a respectable rate is what they're going to be asking. The 3-point shot was a weakness for him in his first NBA tenure. He's developed into a decent floor spacer on low volume. For his international career, he's shooting 40% on over 1,000 attempts. I did a little half-assed research. I was watching some highlights, and something that I did notice is that the opposing announcers, when he was left open, they would say, no, like you can't leave this guy open. You don't want to leave that guy open. So that was a good thing to hear, but he was still open on like all the shots that I saw him make. He was wide open. So I don't know what that really means.
I remember one time in 2018, Jeff Green was standing in the corner and he was getting ready to shoot, and Austin Carr was like, no, don't. They're leaving you open for a reason.
Yeah.
And I think that was really rude because I think Jeff Green's better than Austin Carr was giving him credit for. But he was in a rough stretch, and that's anytime I think of like announcers rooting for things, I think of Austin Carr saying, no, Jeff Green, don't shoot.
Yeah, that's great. The one that always sticks out to me is the Denzel Valentine shot in Chicago, where as soon as he pulls up, it's just a horrible shot. But I mean, look,
it wasn't. Yeah,
Yabusele, he's big and athletic, and the Cavs right now don't have a lot of muscle mass on this roster, so he definitely brings some protein to this squad. I don't know if he would be my pick for like they need to add some front court talent, because I do think he's a little bit of a tweener. But again, the Cavs have to take a chance somewhere, and the pickings are really slim. I would be upset if they ran it back this season without a single addition to their front court, because consider you've lost Tristan Thompson to Bitcoin basically at this point. Damian Jones is learning Chinese. You need some front court help, and Yabusele again is at least an interesting option to try and fill that gap.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they were relying so much on Dean Wade right now, and that's very scary. Not because Dean Wade's a bad basketball player, just because Dean Wade doesn't play basketball for 82 games. Mm-hmm. So, and, when you have these... One of the things that, we're not pro George Niang podcast. That's not who we are. Well, that's kind of who you wanted to be at the beginning. But
I gave him a fair chance.
But he played in 82 games, which is admirable, and that's something that is not guaranteed. So it's like, if he missed 15, 20 games last year, and that lined up with, Dean Wade missing 20 games, what are you doing for power forward? So that's where it's like you just need more bodies who are capable of stepping in and playing that role. And I would rather them have a backup five. I know that that's not really something that everybody, like an opinion everyone shares. I'd rather them have a backup five, because I think you can kind of get away with playing smaller fours for limited minutes with who you have at the five. But Yabusele, I would be on board with that. I would be happy with that. I think it would be a good addition, but I just wanted to say that just because he did well in FIBA doesn't mean it's going to translate. Because even my guy Jetty Osman, FIBA killer.
Yeah. Yeah, it happens all the time. You see those guys just absolutely ball out for their country.
Dennis
it's
Schroeder.
a different environment. Yeah, Dennis
Well,
Schroeder,
I think
great player in the Olympics.
there's just not a depth of wings in the international game. So like we think of size when we talk about like centers and stuff like that, but it really kind of goes all the way through. Like if you don't have like interchangeable wings and stuff like that are really coming down, like that are really able to affect the game on the defensive side of the ball. You can get guys like Jetty just going off. You can get smaller fours kind of having more freedom to do stuff because they don't have multiple guys on the court who can really stop them. And that's why, that's why I think he was able to have success. And that's why, like, I wouldn't really put a lot of stock into that because, like, there's no Dean Wades in the FIBA game. And that's like,
it's a shame.
Like it's a joke, like it's funny, but it's also like it's those guys really make it difficult in the NBA for guys like Jetty Osman to just go off like that.
And to that point, to wrap up our discussion here, during my half-assed research of Yabusele, I noticed that a lot of times, whenever he's like creating his own shot, he kind of just resorts to putting his back to the basket because he's bigger and stronger than everyone. Can't really do that as much in the NBA. That's going to be way more difficult, and the Cavs also probably aren't very interested in having their 12th man in the rotation come in and start posting up. It hasn't worked out for Niang. It didn't work out for Lopez. I don't think it's exactly going to translate. But again, I do agree. Overall, I would be happy with taking a chance on this player because I think that there's an obvious need for players of his size. Even if he's not a true center, at least he can, he has the muscle mass that they're missing and some athleticism that they just haven't had in quite a while.
Yeah, I mean the choice is him or like Marcus Morris, and I think that's a clear choice.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and transition now to talk about the 2024 Olympics and the Team USA squad that just won the gold medal. I know I speak for a lot of fans when I say that watching Kevin Durant, LeBron, and Steph Curry team up was pretty cool. Jackson, I know you're a little more pessimistic, especially that first Curry to LeBron lob during the exhibition games. You weren't riding the wave yet, but did you open yourself up to the Curry wave, or did you remain far away from the splash zone? What were your thoughts?
I remained as far away from the splash zone as possible. I would say that I found the gold medal game where Steph Curry was draining all those threes. I found that rather sickening. Even though I was desperately rooting for the U.S. I will say that what did get me was the game against Serbia, and I was able to get it. Thank you to the good folks at First Energy who decided to keep North Royalton running. Yeah, so I was able to watch that, and that experience was, I think, kind of like where you're like, man, this is awesome, because I think that was cool because like LeBron was just willing his team to victory. KD made that clutch shot. Steph kept making clutch shot after clutch shot. And I think that's where I really felt it, where it was like they needed everybody to kind of chip in and like to overcome the deficit that they had. And I think that was just great. And I think that moment where LeBron grabs Steph's face, I think that's something that I will always remember because I kind of felt like grabbing Steph's face, like that's something where it's just like, dude, like I was just so hyped. And it was just awesome to see. The France game, like, yeah, it was cool. The first one was cool, but then after that, I was like, all right, he's a front runner. We know he's a front runner. He's always been a front runner, and he's just front running. It's fine.
You know what?
Whatever, man.
That is somewhat valid. I will say, I believe it was a 3-point game when he hit the first one. By the time he hit the fourth one, the game was out of reach. And I'm not even gonna name the ESPN person who made this list. I'm not even gonna plug it. I just know that there was a list where they were ranking like the greatest basketball shots in history, and they put the Curry shot number 1 and like the Jordan shot number 2. And I'm like, it makes me mad. One, it's designed to make you mad, but 2, it makes me mad because now I'm like discrediting what was a really cool shot. But I have to be like, well, it's not the greatest. It's nowhere near being the greatest shot ever. Right. But it was an awesome moment. I'm like, it's annoying that like now I have to like discredit it in my mind.
Once he hit the first one, the game was over. And the game,
it essentially was.
It was one of those games where it felt like a college football game where like the score is close, but you're never like, I think Alabama's actually going to lose. It's like, no, they're controlling the line of scrimmage.
Mm.
They're running the ball. Like, it's their game. So, and that's where, like, the Steph Curry shot was great. But it also he kind of had a stinky first 3 quarters, had a bunch of bad turnovers. So, kind of reminded me of 2016 Steph Curry with the turnovers he was having. But yeah, I mean, it was cool. It wasn't. I would say I wasn't like I was happy when he was like I was happy when he was making the shots, but it was like a really short lived happiness. It was like
Okay.
it was like an energy drink where you're like I'm awake, and then it's like 10 minutes later you're like,
And you crash.
why did I do that? Like that was the dumbest thing ever. So that's kind of
I
how I felt with the second Steph Curry game, the gold medal game.
I see where you're coming from there. I have a slightly different opinion just because I didn't get
Well,
to
because
watch
you're a
the
Warriors
Serbia
fan.
game. Well, of course, right? I didn't
Yeah.
get to watch the Serbia game live. So by the time I got to it multiple days later, when my power was restored, I knew the outcome. So it was still really cool. But like that, when he hits the first shot in the gold medal game and then he keeps burying them, even with the game out of reach, the fourth one was so ridiculous. It was such an awesome moment. And I think it was the second or third one that literally got me just to feel that like exhilaration, that rush of like, whoa, this is incredible, that I've never had watching Stephen Curry. As you said, I'm a Warriors fan. Not really
Yeah,
a
and he
Jackson
never
syndrome.
hits he never hits big shots for the Warriors, so I understand why
He
you've
really
never felt
hasn't
that.
had that type of moment in the playoffs. He's had big games, but he's never had like LeBron against Orlando or Toronto or anything like that. So this was like his moment. I think you could make a case it's the most iconic shot of his career, maybe.
I still
I
think
kind of lean towards OKC. Is
I
that
was
where you're
about to say,
going?
yeah, I
Yeah,
was gonna say that was incredible, and that
that
was
was
where, well, and
unbelievable.
and that was like that was the height of Steph Curry mania. I feel like it's kind of been slowly going downhill since then, but just because like it couldn't get higher than that. Like it was
Yeah,
that was when
peak.
that was in the middle of the unanimous MVP season. He already
Yeah.
won a championship. The Warriors were gonna win 73 games, so it wasn't really
Mhm.
like no one can go up from there. But so
Yeah.
that's still when I think of Steph Curry, I'm gonna think of that shot. I'm not gonna think of
Mhm.
the USA shot. Like I think KD's shot um, against Serbia, I think was bigger, even though
Mhm.
because they were up 3 and it put them up 5. And that game, it never felt like the U.S. was going to win it. It was like, like, are they actually going to do it? Are they actually going to do it? You couldn't, like, you knew Serbia had one more trick up their sleeve, or they could potentially have one more trick up their sleeve. But then when Katie hit that shot, it was like,
Yeah.
it's over. It's
That's a
officially
true
over.
dagger. Yeah.
Right.
The
And that
Curry one was a little front running, but it was such an
it was cool.
unbelievable
It
4
was cool.
shots in a row sequence that it was like
Yeah.
it was just overwhelming the amount of shots he
Yeah.
was hitting. And real quick before we move on, the 2016 shot against OKC, I also just wanted to mention this was before pulling up from the logo or behind the logo was like a somewhat regular thing. Like when that shot is in the air, when he's in the process of taking that shot, watching it live, I couldn't believe it. I was like, dude, there's like
Right.
6 seconds on the clock. You don't need to take it from that far. And then he makes it, and it's like, but that was the difference. Is like when he hit that shot against OKC, I was in awe, but I didn't want the Warriors to win that game. So I wasn't
Right.
like, whoa, this is awesome. For Team USA, that was the first time where I like enthusiastically was like, oh my God, Steph Curry, this is so cool. I will say, I was listening to the Fear the Fro podcast, friend of the show, and he had the guy who runs the Cavs France account. And something that I didn't think of or consider is that for us, like watching Team USA, it was like, yeah, there's players that we might have some animosity towards, Joel Embiid, Tatum, Curry, Durant. But like since they're playing for Team USA, we got to enjoy it. For the Cavs France guy, it was just like it was like the Avengers assembling to give him more basketball trauma because Curry once again crushed him. And that actually brings me to another question that I had. What did you think about the Avengers name? How did you feel about that being the nickname for this team?
I think it was a good nickname, actually. Like it's not the dream team, but I think it's cool because they're all like recognizable names and they're all kind of past their prime. So I think it's kind of the last time we're ever gonna see them assemble. So I think it was good. The Avengers are cheesy. All 3 of those guys are really cheesy. I mean, maybe not. Like I don't know. Maybe KD's not cheesy, but
I don't know. Did you see the picture of him going down the slide today?
Okay, so Katie's a dork. I don't think he's cheesy. Like I think Steph,
Fair.
like Steph and LeBron think they're cool, and like I don't think either. Like I love LeBron. I don't think he's cool. You know,
he's a cheese ball. It's okay.
He's the funniest person alive, but he's not the funniest person alive in the way that he thinks he is. So
yeah,
I think that's where like you know, I think that Avengers is a perfect name for them, and I think you felt it too, like that, like in that Serbia game that you didn't watch. It was like, okay, now it's your turn. Okay, now it's my turn. Okay, now it's his turn. Like I think that's where you kind of get that Avengers feel to it.
Mm-hmm. Maybe you won me over a little bit because I was gonna say I don't hate it, but I don't love it either, and here's why. It's just a little too unoriginal for me. Like it's the whole, like you're just stealing an IP basically. Because when you hear the Dream Team, you think of the 1992 Dream Team. Even to an extent, when you hear the Redeem Team, you think of 2008. The Avengers is never going to make you think, oh, the 2024 Olympic basketball team. It's always going to be Iron Man, Captain America. So I sound like I'm hating over the smallest thing. I still think it's neat, and your explanation of it is great, but wasn't my favorite. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the Dream Team was super original either.
Yeah,
really,
but now it's become synonymous with Jordan,
right,
Magic, Bird. I don't know if we're ever going to get to the point where you think Avengers and LeBron, Steph Curry, and Durant. But who cares? This is pointless. Let me ask you a better question. Did it bring joy to your heart to watch Jason Tatum not play meaningful minutes?
Yes.
Or
yes.
was the fact that 3 Celtics were on the roster, did that kind of outweigh the victory lap?
No, I think it actually makes it better where like they're just a bunch of role players, but like, you know, only 2 of them knew that they were role players. Jason Tatum didn't. So, and that's kind of his problem. That's why, you know. So I think that was good. And I think they kind of sucked too. Like
the 3 Celtics.
Like yeah, like
Jrue
Holiday.
was okay. Jrue was okay.
He was fine.
He's a role player. He does.
Yeah, I mean, I think they got too cute by trying to start him because like I get why because in FIBA it's a really good game for smaller guards because you don't have that length on the perimeter that's really hurting them. Like that allows those smaller guards to thrive, but I actually would have been okay with giving Jason Tatum more minutes in like the beginning to try to get him more into a rhythm. He certainly didn't earn them, and he certainly sucked every time he did play, and there was no reason for people to be like complaining like they did. And I'm glad that USA won just because, you know, those losers who were like, I'm not gonna root for USA because Jason Tatum's not playing. Like, I'm glad that they got to lose. So good for them. But yeah, I mean, you know, they are who we thought they were. That's all I'm gonna say.
Well, I'm glad you got that victory lap. For me personally, like, look, Tatum, he didn't play because when he was on the court, he wasn't playing very well.
He sucked.
He wasn't shooting well. On paper, he is a very good connective piece because he does a lot of connective things. But when he's not hitting jump shots, it's been the case for his whole career. Like if he's not hitting jump shots, it's just he's not nearly as effective. He still hasn't found other ways to be as impactful. During this championship run, he did that to a much greater degree than we've seen in the past. But it was understandable why he didn't get out on the floor. The only thing I do want to say is that I somewhat like Tatum. I don't hate him. I know everyone hates the Celtics. I think he's a somewhat likable player, so I don't really.
He's not likable. He's not likable at all. He's not likable at all. So
I think he is. He's a little cheesy, but I like him.
No, he's so I think Jason Tatum exemplifies what's wrong with like modern basketball players in the sense that like they try to like invent themselves in a way, or like they try to like write their own narrative. Like they try to like Kobe wrote his own narrative, Jordan wrote his own narrative, LeBron has tried to write his own narrative and it hasn't been as good, even though he's a better player. But I think Jason Tatum's trying to like write his own narrative and like try to like construct his own reality and create his own myth, but like he's just not in that tier at all. So it just comes out as being like really hollow and like, oh, I'm gonna wear this Kobe shirt before the game because I'm going to channel my inner Mamba. And it's like, no, don't. Like you don't
That's
need to do that. And that's where I'm just like, you're not really like he does. Like he's not like a bad guy. He's not. He's just corny, and it just feels like it's what's wrong with like kind of like the corporate basketball superstar type player where you're always trying to like be cool. It's kind of like everyone got together and like, well, what would be the cool thing to do today? And it's like, I think this would be cool. Okay, let's do that instead of like Anthony Edwards is not I think Anthony Edwards kind of sucks. But he's cool. So like, and he's the like
he was
like
not
he
great in the
naturally
Olympics.
yeah. Well, see, this is where I don't know if I should say this here because people actually listen to this, but like it or like
Now you
some
gotta
people
let it fly.
sometimes do, but like I just don't know what the ceiling is for Anthony Edwards because he can't pass. He's not a good passer. He's not a good shooter. And it's like you can only get so far as being like a 6'5" athlete. You kind of have to round out your game more. And I think that he gets a little too much credit for the Wolves being able to get past the Nuggets as they did. I think it was a really good team effort. Like we like to, like Gobert likes to be a punching bag. Cat is somebody who likes to be a punching bag, but like they all really like I think it was more of a team effort than like Anthony Edwards dragging him across the
Mhm.
finish line. And I'm concerned when some of those like luxury tax bills start to make it so they have to get rid of their core team. Like I don't know how far they can go with just like Anthony Edwards and a bunch of guys that don't fit as well or just aren't as good. So I just want to call that out. Like, yes, he is good, but I think he's overrated.
I will push back just very slightly because I think in the Phoenix, first off, he's a very young player still. I don't know what his ceiling is, so I'm not saying he's going to be after the Nuggets series. People were getting very carried away. I will agree with that. I do think against Phoenix and against Denver, we did see glimpses of him becoming a more willing passer, playmaker. I thought he made very good decisions throughout, and like he's a streaky shooter. He's not a great shooter yet, but he was shooting the ball well in those series, and so you see the vision with him. The problem is putting
Right.
it together, and that's really what it comes down to. Like I always look at Giannis as a good example as far as like the playmaking goes. If you want to really take that next step and be a championship caliber player, I thought Giannis's playmaking during that championship run was like huge to me. The development that he made, he didn't
Mhm.
become LeBron out there, but all of a sudden you couldn't double him because he would make the right play. And that's where Anthony Edwards, again, very young, is still just kind of learning. And I think that was one of his biggest downfalls in the Olympics is that he wasn't able to be a connective piece when that was the role that was being asked of him.
Right, and I definitely agree with you. But the bar for how good of a playmaker you have to be when you are a tank like Giannis is so
Mhm.
much lower than
Yeah.
like it is when you're like a 6'5" guy who's not really a great shooter. And like,
Mhm.
would you rather like who's going to be a better player overall? Like when it's all said and done, like Devin Booker or Anthony Edwards? Like I would like right now I would lean towards Devin Booker and that's not, like Devin Booker's I think he's going to be a great, like when it's all done we're going to say, "Oh yeah, he was a great like Hall of Fame player." I don't think we're going to say this was an all-time great player. And I think that's
Mhm.
kind of where Anthony Edwards is probably falling in that conversation just because like unless he becomes a significantly better shooter. And like we know Devin Booker's flaws like point Devin Booker's not a thing. They tried to make it a thing this year and it didn't work at all. But he's a good outside shooter. He has multiple ways he can attack a team. And I don't know if like Anthony Edwards is going to develop those counters. He might, and if he does, obviously he's going to ascend to another level and maybe it's just people are projecting that he's going to make
I think
those, that he's
that's
going
what
to
it
connect
is.
those
Mhm.
dots and like I think those dots are a lot harder to connect. And if he was a really good outside shooter and was just like he needs to develop as a playmaker more, I think you could see it better. But because he has to develop both, or at least one, it's like I don't know if the ceiling's as high as people think it is. There's a lot of questions with him. But he's cooler,
Okay.
and that
Yeah.
and that's kind of my whole point. Is
Yeah.
he's cooler.
He's got the
He's
aura. He's
cooler,
aura man.
right? Yeah, and like Jason
But no,
Tatum has none of that, and that was the whole point.
I do think Edwards, the sell for him is just that he's so young and he's already accomplished like a little bit here. For Tatum, I think the problem there is just you kind of hit on this. It's like he's a very, very good basketball player, but he's just not in that tier of like a Kevin Durant, a LeBron James. Like he's not going to be the face of the league unless there's a huge development here. And that's kind of the problem, is that his narrative has been trending that way because he was so great at such a young age, and he just hasn't broken into that tier. So overall, I still think Tatum's a great player. And it was fun watching them all team up this year in the Olympics. Go ahead.
Last thing with the Celtics is they play a very uninspiring brand of basketball in the sense that they're just like Moneyball. Like they're what people think the Rockets were. Like I thought the Rockets had a lot more creativity in the sense that like James Harden is trying crazy stuff. You had Chris Paul there for a little bit. Like I thought they like, even though people didn't like it, and understandably so, like I think the Celtics are just like a way worse version of that. You know, everyone's spaced out on the 3-point line. It's super easy reads. It's super easy. Like you're open, you take the shot. Jason Tatum can dribble the air out of the ball some, because if somebody does start to help, he can just make the simple pass. And they're all really good shooters, so if someone's going to make a shot, it's going to be a good play. But I don't know if he's the driving force of a championship team, but I think it's just kind of like you just had a bunch of like B+ players together who really fit in well, and I think that they kind of cracked the code for NBA basketball for right now. So it's like I think that just kind of makes everybody appear better than they actually are in a vacuum.
Yeah, and I think the big difference between like those Rockets teams and the Celtics team is that the Celtics just had 5 guys who could legitimately shoot the ball. Like the Rockets had the PJ Tucker season where it's like it's the only time he's ever been a good shooter. They had Chris Paul. Like they didn't have the quality of shooters. I mean, Kristaps just changes everything. You talk about like breaking the code of basketball. You get a 7-footer who can space the floor and protect the rim. Clint Capella wasn't shooting threes for Houston.
And Al Horford,
and even
who also sucks. Like, he just had an out-of-body experience for the whole playoffs. Like, that was insane. Yeah.
I like Al Horford, too, personally. I know we hate the Celtics.
Why do you like all these boring people? Like, these are just boring people. Like, I just don't understand.
I hate them. They're just existing.
Yeah, they're just like they're making basketball worse.
I don't think Tatum has done anything interesting enough for me to hate him. Like he's not like Draymond Green, he's not Dylan Brooks. He's kind of just existing, and maybe he's a little corny and cheesy, but hey, it is what it is.
Right? Like
go ahead.
Yeah.
One more take.
We'll stop.
Okay. I was gonna say I do want to get into our final segment here, and I want to cap this Olympic talk off before we get to some more Cavs talk. It's just saying that I really enjoyed the fact that these games were competitive. I think it's great that the international game has been catching up to Team USA. This isn't 1992 where opponents are just awestruck and starstruck by Michael Jordan. In 2024, these countries have superstars of their own, whether it's Jokic, Wembanyama. Like it's just made for a much better product. And I think that the best is yet to come for the Olympics because of that. Like the reason why that Serbia game was so exciting, the reason why Curry's 4 shots were so exciting is because Team USA wasn't up by 25 points when it happened. It was actually, it mattered a little bit. And so I'm really excited to see this as it continues to grow.
Yeah, and I'm kind of concerned about 2028 just because I think the way that the US really wins is like the Kevin Durant type players, the Carmelo Anthony type players, like those kind of 3-4 guys who can shoot and just kind of like there's nobody in any of these games who can really guard those guys, you know. And I think that's
the 3 best players on the floor.
Right, but it's also like the 3 best players in kind of like those spots. Like I can't say like, oh, there's not another LeBron James coming because we may never see another LeBron James. But like there's no Carmelo Anthony type 3-4 guy who can really shoot that can just kind of like overwhelm teams, because we saw in the first game against Serbia, the group stage game, where like, you know, Serbia was hanging with them, and then you bring in KD and it's like, oh, well, what are we supposed to do now? Just because like
7 or something crazy.
Right, like you have those, you know, shooters who can kind of play the wing, play the 4, gives you that versatility. Like I think the US has some depth at like the big man. I think, especially if you really like Cooper Flag, you have Chet, you have Evan Mobley, Bam's still going to be around, AD's probably going to be around in 2028. So like you have depth there, and I think like the US always has good small guards, and you have those, guys who are like the two. You even have, like Anthony Edwards, Devin Booker's still going to be around, Donovan Mitchell could be in the mix, but you don't have those like those 3-4 type guys, and I think that's what kind of breaks the international game open, So that's where I'm a little concerned with the U.S., where you're gonna have to win kind of playing their game, because it's like, Canada, Canada has a really good, two. They have good, they have good guard play, but their wings are like R.J. Barrett. And, it's like, okay, like, like that's where I would say like their weaknesses. And RJ Barrett was phenomenal in this tournament, just because I think this is like, it just shows that there's like a lack of those type of players. And I'm not sure if the US has those type of players. Maybe Jason Tatum can adapt his game more to that level. Maybe Jaylen Brown, but that's where I have my concerns, is like, does the U.S. have somebody who can kind of step up in the KD, Carmelo Anthony role?
Yeah, I share that same concern. And speaking of 2028, let's move into our final segment here by making it about the Cavs once again, and just trying to see. I think it's safe to assume that Team USA will look different by 2028. It sounds like Curry, Durant, and LeBron will be gone by then. So do you think any member of the Cavaliers will be on Team USA? And if so, who would it be?
Well, first off, LeBron James will be on Team USA, so that's
you think so?
Yeah, and will be a Cavalier, so that's that's 2 for 2.
Oh yeah,
So
I didn't think of it that way.
Yeah, so but I mean, like, LeBron is so freaking good, man.
Yeah, we didn't even really talk about it, but
like,
there's no context that you can provide to really put into perspective how just we've never seen an athlete or a basketball player like this. The fact that he's 39, and for many stretches it looked like he was the best player in the world.
I mean, he got the MVP, and he deserved it. I know people were saying that Curry deserved it, but
LeBron was great throughout the entire
Curry was better. Curry was certainly better the last 2 games, But
LeBron really he kind of carried them against Serbia for a big stretch.
He did.
Curry and Durant both hit big shots.
But Curry kind of kept them within reach in the first quarter, and then he also helped them in the fourth. But it was all like, I had it for one of my cup of Cavs for Fear of the Sword. Like LeBron, it was like 17 of 30 points he scored or assisted in the fourth quarter against Serbia.
Sounds like LeBron.
Like, he's still like the chess master, and it's just like, I don't know if he's ever going to be bad. Like, he will be bad at some point in time, but like, I could see him still playing like Tom Brady did. Like, Tom Brady played forever. Like, I think LeBron could still be a really good player in 4 years. So I'd
love to keep seeing.
I have more faith in him being a good player in 4 years than I do Steph Curry. And I know I just talked a lot of crap about Steph Curry. Like, Steph Curry's great, actually. But like, I just see LeBron being better in 4 years.
Because you could just let LeBron play point guard, which is I know a lot of people have talked about that. Like, just let him set whoever's on Team USA in 2028. Just let LeBron set them up.
I mean, he's doing that now. Like, he's the one, and he was guarding Jokic down the stretch. So like, I think he can do that for 4, 5, 6 years at a really high level, and it's insane to even say that, because he's not he's so freaking good. So. Whether or not he'll be on the Cavs is another thing, but I think LeBron could be there. But like, Evan Mobley, I think, is the best candidate, just because like, Donovan Mitchell's really good, but it's just such a hard position to really stand out. Like, Tyrese Halliburton's really good. Tyrese Halliburton's going to be on the team like, there's just so many guys who are really good at that position. And Donovan Mitchell will be getting a little older by 2028. He's somebody who really relies on his athleticism will that athleticism still be there, like to this level in 2028, where he's one of the best American guards, is something that I think is fair to question. Um, I don't know if Darius Garland ever gets there. Just I really thought he would, because he was on the select team in 2020, and
Mhm.
he seemed to play really well there. But he needs to prove it. So I would say Evan Mobley has the best chance.
Yeah, I'm gonna break down my thoughts real quick, and we'll see where I end up, because Mitchell is like the obvious choice at first, because you're like, well, he's the best player on the Cavs. I think
Mhm.
because we've seen Team USA prioritize team building and chemistry over just raw talent, I think that hurts his case a little bit, as well as the guards just being like, there's so many guards fighting for these spots. Uh, Prior to
Yeah.
last season for Mitchell, I would say this would have almost been a deal breaker for him, because he, like, the last season we saw him take huge strides as a playmaker, and that's the key for me, is like, can he continue to grow in that department and showcase that he'll
Mhm.
be a willing passer and accept a smaller role? Because I think Devin Booker's like a great example of that. The way that Devin Booker accepted his role with Team USA this year, that's what Mitchell would kind of have to do to a degree, and I think that's what would hold him back. He's clearly talented enough, and I think he's capable of doing all of those things. It's a matter of actually doing it, and Team USA deciding we're going to go with Mitchell instead of whoever is still in the run by
Right.
2028.
And even I would say he needs to play in some of the FIBA games, but
Yeah.
even like Jalen Brunson played in FIBA games,
Mm,
and he wasn't there. So it's like
yeah.
it's just you just have so much depth in that guard
Yeah.
position, and I don't think that's what's going to win them the championship anyways. Like win them
Mm.
gold next time anyway. So it's like I just don't think it's a position that they're going to really load up on.
It's tough. I don't see them, like you said. I don't think that's the position where they're going to be like, we want the main high usage guy on our team being a guard.
Hmm.
I don't really see that happening. So you might as well talk Darius Garland too. It kind of hurts. I feel like he has been surpassed by Tyrese Halliburton. That was like the roadmap that I wanted to see
So
him follow, and I kind of think Tyrese has just eclipsed him.
like that's kind of working under the assumption that Tyrese Halliburton wasn't in front of him going into this past season, which is kind of an
They were
assumption that
they were they
only
were
that
neck and
only
neck. I
you
think they were neck
were
and neck.
that only you were working from. So
Hey, you
I
know
just
what?
want to point that out.
I will say though, and I'm not really making the case for Garland, but I kind of am. I don't think it'll happen, but I'm just saying I do think the fact that Garland has been attempting to thrive in this role next to Mitchell and just the Cavs core four could be something that helps him earn a spot, especially if he returns to the production we saw in 2022 and just shows how lethal he is as a table setter, because that on paper fits what Team USA would want to do, but you need to see a big bounce back from him before
Hmm.
this becomes even a
Right.
conversation. Before I talk Mobley, I'll say real quick about Allen. He also does a lot of those intangibles that like Team USA wants. He's basically the textbook example of a star role player. You think
Hmm.
about maybe Joel Embiid doesn't play, Anthony Davis could play, but if he's injured, there's a path for Allen to be like the second or third string center. It's probably unlikely, but I do think there's a path there. And then
Yeah.
Mobley, I'll basically keep it simple. I mean, look, if he takes the leap, then yeah. If he makes the leap that we want to see happen, then yeah, he's a very real option for Team USA. He just kind of has to make that leap first before it becomes like a legit discussion. Now, I have one last take that's going to burn your eyebrows off. Is there
I've already heard it, and it's
is
bad.
there a scenario where Jalen Tyson develops into a Derek White type of guy, where it's like he's clearly not nearly talented as the rest of the roster, but he does all the role player things and he doesn't need the ball, or he has the ego of a superstar? To be clear, I don't think this is going to happen. I just wanted to mention him to shock Jackson. Unfortunately, it was spoiled in our before we started recording, but I do think the real point I want to make is that I actually think someone like Derek White is the blueprint that Tyson should attempt to follow throughout his NBA career. I think that would be a really good player to model his game after.
We had this discussion about who your guy is, like because you don't
Yeah.
have a guy because you're just a hype man for everyone, so you're a hype man for no one.
Everyone's my guy.
Is will Jalen Tyson be your guy?
Very strong candidate to being my guy. Very strong candidate,
Okay, all right.
especially after summer league. We'll have
Especially
to
after
see.
Craig Porter Jr. is
Yeah, that was tough.
yeah.
I don't want to talk about that at this moment.
Okay, that's fine.
We're still trying to process what happened in summer league there.
So, all right, well, keep us updated on that. Nothing that I saw from Jalen Tyson made me think that that's a possibility, just because his best moments all came when he had the ball, and he didn't do anything when he didn't have the ball. So that will need to change, but, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
I think there's, we can like Jalen Tyson without saying he's going to be on the Olympic team in 2028.
Can we really like him?
Yeah.
If we're
we
not
can.
projecting this? I hope everyone knows I'm kidding. I don't.
He's not.
I would be shocked if Tyson was on the 2028
He's not
team.
kidding.
Let me be clear. I do want him to follow Derek White as a blueprint, though. I do think that's what you would hope Jalen Tyson brings to this Cavs team, is the way they're constructed right now. It's not as big or as lanky as Derek White. But anyways, that's going to do it for this episode
or as
of the
good.
Junkyard Pod. Yet. I want to thank everyone who tuned in. And if you enjoyed this episode, please consider dropping a like or hitting subscribe. Those two things really go a long way towards helping the channel, and we truly do appreciate it. You can follow me and Jackson on Twitter. Links will be in the description. And feel free to leave a comment with your thoughts on the Olympics, who you think will represent Team USA in 2028, and if Yabusele is an interesting enough player for the Cavs to take a chance on. With all that being said, go Cavs.
Ryan, what was your favorite part of Paris?